AITA for not forgiving my family who abandoned me over false accusations. I am a 32-year-old man. I was living at home while finishing my engineering degree and working part-time at a local auto repair shop. Back then, I was 24 years old. My younger brother, Kyle, was 22 and had been dating a girl named Ashley for almost a year and a half. She was one of those girls who seemed perfect on paper, pretty, smart, from a good family. My parents adored her. They would not stop talking about how lucky Kyle was and how she was the perfect material to be their daughter-in-law. However, I never quite liked her. There was something about her that always seemed fake to me. With my parents, she was all sweetness and innocence, but I had seen her behave rudely to service workers when she thought no one was watching. Furthermore, she had this subtle way of throwing comments disguised as jokes, but with poison behind them. Things like, "Oh, still living at home. When are you going to get your life together like Kyle?" Said with a smile that never reached her eyes. Kyle, for his part, was completely in love. He canceled plans with friends, skipped family gatherings. He basically reorganized his entire life around what Ashley wanted. It was painful to watch, but he was my brother, and I thought that sooner or later he would open his eyes on his own. The day everything went wrong started as normally as possible. I was supposed to help Kyle move some furniture from his old apartment to his new place. We had agreed to meet there around 3 in the afternoon, but around 1:30, he sent me a message saying his car was making weird noises and he had to stop by the shop to get it checked. He let me know he would be an hour late, but that Ashley would be there to let me in and I could get a head start with the small boxes. It did not seem like a big deal, right? So I figured I would grab a coffee on the way and start packing some of his books or whatever. Kyle had given me his spare key months ago when he first moved, so I did not think twice about it. I arrived at his apartment building around 1:45 and took the elevator to the 3rd floor. The hallway was silent. Most people were probably at work. Typical quiet Tuesday afternoon. I walked up to Kyle's door and was about to knock when I heard voices inside. I thought Ashley was maybe on the phone or watching television. I used my key to open the door and walked in saying, "Hey, it is me," so I would not scare her. And then I saw them. Ashley was in a passionate embrace with Derek against the wall of Kyle's living room. They were kissing intensely, completely lost in each other. Derek was my brother's friend from college, the same guy who had been at every birthday party, at every family barbecue for the past 3 years. "What is going on?" I yelled. They pulled apart immediately. Ashley's face went from passion to panic in half a second. Derek turned around and went white as a sheet seeing me standing there. For a moment, nobody said anything. I was boiling inside. "Are you kidding me right now?" I snapped, looking at both of them in my own brother's apartment. Ashley started to cry, pushed Derek away, and backed into the corner of the room, sobbing endlessly. "Please do not tell him. Please do not tell him." Derek stepped between us with a weirdly protective attitude. "Man, you need to leave," he said. "Just go." "Excuse me?" As if I was the one who did not belong there. "Kyle is my brother. What do you think you are doing, Derek?" I blurted out. That was when Ashley really lost control. She was hyperventilating, repeating through tears, "He is going to tell everyone. Kyle will never forgive me." I tried to calm her down, but every word made her more hysterical, while Derek kept repeating over and over for me to leave. Finally, I had had enough, and I left. I thought about calling Kyle and letting him handle it. I drove home going over how I was going to tell him what I had seen. I knew it would destroy him, but he had to know. My brother deserved better than being cheated on by someone he trusted. But that night my phone started blowing up with calls from Kyle. When I finally answered, he was screaming, "What did you do to Ashley?" The conversation was like a nightmare. He was so upset I could barely understand him at first. Apparently, Ashley had called him crying right after I left, telling him that I had assaulted her in his apartment. Her story was that she was alone when I arrived, and that while helping with the furniture, I had crossed a serious line and tried to force myself on her. Derek, of course, was backing up her version, saying he had come in to stop me, but that I was too strong and had threatened them both. I could not believe what I was hearing. "Kyle, that is crazy. I caught them in a compromising situation. She is cheating on you with Derek." "Stop lying," he yelled. "Ashley would never cheat on me. She loves me. You are jealous because you cannot get a girl like her." The jealousy angle hit me hard because it was absurd. I had never felt envious of his relationship. If anything, I felt sorry for him because I could see how manipulative she was. I tried to explain to him over and over what I had really seen, but Kyle did not want to hear it. He said Ashley was already talking to the police. The police. I felt like I had fallen into an alternate reality where nothing made sense. Kyle, please, you have to listen to me. I am your brother. Why would I lie about this? Because you have always hated her, he replied. You have never been able to stand seeing me happy. Well, congratulations, you just destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me. He hung up on me. I sat there with my hands shaking, trying to process what had just happened. 20 minutes ago, I was worried about how to tell my brother that his girlfriend was cheating on him. Now, suddenly, I was the one being accused of a serious situation. I drove to my parents' house. I walked in and found them in the kitchen. They already knew. Kyle had called them before me, and they were both looking at me like I was a stranger. My mom was crying, and my dad had an expression I had never seen on him before. Is it true? My dad asked. Is it true what? I answered. That I caught Ashley cheating on my brother with Derek, and now she is lying to cover it up? Yes, that is true. My mom let out a gasp as if I had just confessed to something unthinkable. How could you do this to your brother? To that sweet girl. I tried to explain what had really happened, but they were not listening any better than Kyle. They had already decided I was guilty. They preferred to believe that their son was capable of something like that rather than accept that their perfect future daughter-in-law had been unfaithful. The following hours were surreal. Kyle came home with Ashley. She was playing the victim role to perfection. She cried every time someone looked at her. She backed away when I entered the room. She had clearly studied how trauma victims act. Her performance deserved an Oscar. Kyle would not even look at me. When I tried to talk to him, he just said, "Stay away from my girlfriend." My own brother, treating me like a threat in the house where we grew up together. But the worst part was seeing my parents comforting Ashley, my mom making her tea and telling her how brave she was. My dad patting Kyle on the back, telling him what a good man he was for taking care of his woman. And me, sitting there, their real son, treated like the problem. No one asked for my side of the story. No one seemed to care that their son and brother might be innocent. They had already made their decision. That night, Kyle cornered me in the hallway outside my bedroom. He was different than I had ever seen him, angry in an almost terrifying way. "If you ever go near Ashley again, I will hurt you myself," he told me. The little brother I taught to throw a ball was talking to me like I was his worst enemy. "Kyle, she is lying. I swear to God she is lying. I caught her cheating, and she is covering it up," I told him. He grabbed me by the shirt and shoved me against the wall. His look was that of someone who wanted to harm me. "You are going to keep lying even now," he screamed at me. "After what you did to her. You are sick, man. You are really sick." I pushed him away and told him, "Fine then, do not believe me. But when you discover the truth, do not come crying to me." "The only truth is that my brother is the problem," he replied. "And I will never forgive you for this." 2 days later, the police came to the house with an arrest warrant for me. I saw it coming, but being handcuffed in front of the neighbors was a humiliation beyond words. The detective in charge was an older guy who from the beginning already seemed to have made up his mind. I was guilty. In the interrogation, he would throw questions at me like, "Did you plan it? Or was it impulsive?" As if trying to force me to confess to something I did not do. He had that tired attitude of having seen it all, as if my words were just another excuse. I told him the truth that I had caught Ashley cheating and that she was lying to cover herself. He replied that this is what men in my situation say, that accusing the alleged victim is such a typical defense that it ends up sounding more suspicious than truthful. My parents kept asking me if I was sure of what I was saying, as if I myself could be confused or making it up. The only person who believed me was my friend Marcus. He had always distrusted Ashley. The investigation lasted 6 weeks. 6 weeks in which my life was suspended while the police interviewed witnesses and collected evidence. The house became a war zone. Kyle and Ashley were there all the time, and she exploited the victim role to the fullest. She would have panic attacks every time I entered a room and would break down in front of my parents, describing how traumatized she was. Her performance did not stop even when she thought nobody saw her. Kyle became her guard dog. He would sit next to her during her attacks and glare at me, as if I were a dangerous person that needed to be controlled. My parents also believed her completely. They comforted Ashley, telling her how sorry they were that their son had done something like that to her. I felt like a ghost in my own home. The worst part was that no one wanted to hear my version. Every time I tried to explain what had really happened, they silenced me, saying I was re-traumatizing the victim. I was guilty until proven innocent, and honestly, I was not even sure that would be enough. My university suspended me until the case was resolved. At work, I was fired for inappropriate conduct. My friends stopped answering calls and messages. The news spread quickly through town, and soon I could not go anywhere without noticing the stares or the whispers around me. Marcus was the only one who stayed by me. He would come to see me, although it was always awkward because Kyle would leave the room every time he showed up. Marcus repeated to me over and over that he knew I was innocent, that the truth would come to light sooner or later. Sometimes I doubted if he really believed me or if he was just being loyal, but his support was the only thing keeping me sane. Almost a month later, the detective called me in for another interview. He said they had been reviewing Derek's statement and had found several inconsistencies. Apparently, Derek had changed his story twice about what he had supposedly seen, and his timeline did not match Ashley's. When you lie, keeping the details straight is almost impossible, especially under police pressure. The detective also mentioned that they had requested Ashley's phone records and found some interesting messages. He did not tell me what they said, but his attitude toward me had changed. He no longer spoke to me as if I was guilty. He asked me different, more specific questions. He even asked if I had any proof of the affair I claimed to have witnessed. Unfortunately, there were no security cameras near Kyle's apartment. I had no evidence, only what I had seen with my own eyes, and apparently that was not enough. 2 weeks later, the charges were dropped. The detective called me to say that they had not found any evidence to support Ashley's claims, and that, in fact, there was various evidence contradicting her story. He informed me that the case would not move forward. The relief I felt was overwhelming, although it came mixed with a deep anger for having had to wait 6 weeks to reach a conclusion that had always been obvious. You would think that would be the end of it, but you would be wrong. My parents' reaction upon learning the charges were dropped was basically, well, just because they cannot prove it does not mean it did not happen. They said they were disappointed in the justice system and that they still believed what they believed. It seemed they were more interested in being right than in accepting that their son was innocent. Kyle was even worse. He said the dropping of the charges proved nothing. The mental gymnastics they did were impressive. Instead of admitting they had been wrong, they reinforced their conviction that I was guilty. But the most painful thing was that everyone remained loyal to Ashley. Even after the charges were dropped, even when it was clear her story did not hold up, my family chose to believe her over me. Ashley kept going to family dinners. Kyle continued treating her like his princess. My parents still saw her as their future daughter-in-law. I was the one who was no longer welcome in his own home. My parents said I could stay until I figured things out, but it was obvious they wanted me to leave. Kyle made it clear he could not stand to be in the same room as me. The house that had been my home for 24 years suddenly felt hostile and alien. The final blow came about 2 weeks after the charges were dropped. I overheard my parents talking in the kitchen about how worried they were about having me there and how they needed to think about Ashley's comfort. They were literally choosing my brother's lying girlfriend over their own son. The conversation I heard was brutal. They were discussing whether to ask me to move out permanently because my mere presence, they said, made Ashley uncomfortable. That night I packed everything I owned into my car. I left a note saying I was leaving town and not to look for me. I drove straight to Marcus's house and told him I was done. Done with my family, done with that town, done with trying to prove my innocence to people who had already decided I was guilty. Marcus tried to talk me out of it. He told me I should stay and fight, but I was already done fighting. Sometimes you have to know when to walk away, even if it means losing everything you once thought was important. I knew that even if I stayed, the damage was already done and I had no proof. I no longer had a place among my people. I headed west without any real plan, other than putting as much distance as possible between them and me. I ended up in Seattle, Washington, the first big city I found after crossing the country, and, honestly, the distance felt right. I figured that if I was going to disappear, I should do it completely. The rainy weather and the Pacific Northwest pace of life made everything seem like a totally new world, exactly what I needed. The first few months were hard as hell. I was living in a tiny studio apartment in a somewhat rough part of the city, working construction jobs that paid cash under the table. My English was the same, so most of the time I worked with other guys desperate for a job as I was. The construction crew became a sort of temporary family, guys who did not ask about your past and only judged you on whether you could hold a hammer and show up on time. The hardest part was the isolation. For the first time in my life, I had no one, no family, no childhood friends, no connections of any kind. Just me, in a new part of the country, trying to rebuild my life from scratch. Some nights I would sit in that tiny apartment eating ramen, wondering if I had made the biggest mistake of my life. The work was brutal, but also therapeutic. There is something about building things with your own hands that helps clear the mind when everything else falls apart. I specialized in framing and drywall work that required concentration and precision. The physical exhaustion helped me sleep, and seeing how a building took shape, piece by piece, gave me a small sense of pride amid so much emptiness. I legally changed my name after about 6 months. It cost me almost everything I had saved, but I needed to completely get rid of my old identity. Every time I saw my old name on some document, it reminded me of everything that had happened. The new name felt like putting on clean clothes after being covered in mud. Marcus stayed in touch, which probably saved my sanity. He would call me every couple of weeks to check on me and eventually started visiting me a couple of times a year. It was comforting to have someone from my previous life who still believed in me. He would update me on what was happening back home, although most of the time I preferred not to hear it. Knowing that my family's life moved on without me was like scratching a wound that would not finish healing. Apparently, Kyle and Ashley got more serious after I left. He proposed to her with an elaborate setup in the park where they had their first date. My parents were thrilled, talking nonstop about the wedding plans and future grandchildren. Kyle had gotten a promotion at work, and together they seemed to lead a perfect domestic life. From the outside, it all looked like a happy ending, except for the son and brother they had to discard to achieve it. Marcus never said it directly, but it was obvious he thought my family was messed up for having chosen Ashley over me. Sometimes he would make comments about how weird it was that they never asked about me or did not seem worried about where I had gone, but he was loyal to me, not to them. So he kept most of those observations to himself. He mentioned that some mutual friends had started asking about my disappearance, but Kyle and my parents simply said I had moved for work. After about a year, I started to rebuild my life for real. I enrolled in a university program to finish my engineering degree, using my new identity. The transition back to academic life was tough after so many months of physical labor, but it felt good to use my head again. I made a few friends, nothing deep, just people I could grab a drink with or watch a ball game. My employment situation also improved. I got a job at a construction company that specialized in commercial buildings. The pay was decent and the work satisfying. I started dating again around the second year, although trust remained a huge issue, but little by little I learned to open up. I managed to establish a routine, a decent apartment, a job I did not hate, and surround myself with a few people who knew me simply as a normal guy. That helped rebuild my self-esteem. The real change came in the third year when I met Hannah at a coffee shop near campus. She was a nursing student from Portland, Oregon, and we clicked immediately. She was patient with my insecurities. She never pressured me when she noticed I was uncomfortable. We took it slow, step by step. I told her I had a complicated past, but without going into details, and she never pried. That patience of hers made me trust her even more. When I was finally ready to tell her the whole story, we had been together for almost a year, and by then she knew me well enough to know I was not capable of what I had been accused of. Hannah changed everything for me. She helped me remember who I was before everything fell apart. Her family history was completely different from mine. She had grown up in a stable home with parents who actually communicated, who solved problems instead of picking sides. When she talked about her childhood, it sounded like she came from another planet. We got serious pretty quickly once I opened up to her. She was the first person, besides Marcus, who heard the whole story, and her reaction was immediate. It is insane that your family believed her over you. Hearing that, having someone validate that I was not exaggerating, that I was not crazy, was huge for my mental health. When Hannah took me to meet her family, they welcomed me as if I had always been a part of them. Her dad taught me how to fish on the Columbia River. Her mom shared family recipes that had been passed down from generation to generation. No one questioned my past or made me feel like I had to justify myself. They simply accepted that I was important to Hannah, and that was enough. Her parents had been married for 30 years and still acted as if they genuinely enjoyed each other's company. After almost 2 years together, Hannah got pregnant. Twins. It was terrifying and incredible at the same time. We were having a boy and a girl, and I remember thinking my kids would never know the pain of being abandoned by their family. When they were born, everything made sense. Holding them for the first time, I knew I would do anything before letting anyone hurt them the way I had been hurt. They were going to grow up knowing their father would always believe them, always support them, and always be on their side. Now they are 4 years old, and they are my everything. Hannah's family got involved in ways I never imagined. Her parents moved to the Seattle area to be close to their grandkids, retiring early to help us with childcare. Her dad helped me buy a house in a good neighborhood with good schools, co-signing the mortgage with me because my credit score was not enough. Her mom practically moved in with us the first month after the birth, doing laundry, cooking, and teaching Hannah and me how to survive with 2 babies at once. I got a promotion to project manager at the construction company, which brought better pay and more flexible hours. That allowed me to spend more time with the kids while still advancing in my career. Hannah finished her nursing degree and got a job at a children's hospital, which was perfect because she could understand firsthand what other families were going through. We were living a dream, good jobs, a nice house, healthy kids, and an extended family that supported us in everything. The kids grew up believing they only had one set of grandparents and viewed it as completely normal. I told Hannah's parents the truth about my family, and they were clear. To them, I was their son. They took their role as grandparents very seriously, showing up at every birthday, every school play, and every soccer game. My kids called them Grandma and Grandpa, and they spoiled them like any other grandchild. Marcus kept visiting, usually twice a year, and became a sort of uncle to the kids. They adored him, and he loved to spoil them and hand them back to us when they got cranky. He still kept me updated on what was happening back at my old home, although by then I barely wanted to know. Kyle and Ashley had gotten married in a huge, wildly expensive wedding that apparently my parents paid for. They bought a house 3 blocks from where we grew up, close enough for Ashley to keep playing her perfect daughter-in-law role. Kyle was working at the same engineering firm where my dad had been before retiring. It was as if they were living the life I was supposed to have, and they were doing it with the woman who had destroyed my chance of having it. Marcus told me my parents never mention me or ask how I am doing. It was as if I never existed. They had created an alternate reality where their son is Kyle and their daughter-in-law is Ashley. I was erased from the family history. By that time, the truth is it no longer hurt like before. I had a family that truly cared about me. Kids who thought I was a hero just because I could fix their broken toys and make pancakes on Saturday mornings. And a life built on the truth, not on lies. 8 years after everything fell apart, and 5 years into a quiet family life with Hannah and the twins, the universe decided to test me again. It was a Saturday morning, and I was helping my son with his math homework while Hannah and my daughter were at the grocery store. Just any given weekend. The doorbell rang and I assumed it would be a neighbor or a delivery guy. My son ran to open the door before I could stop him. I heard him talking to someone, but I could not quite make out what they were saying. Then he came running back with a frown and a confused face. "Dad, there is an old man at the door who says he is your dad." I felt my stomach drop. I walked toward the entrance, and there was my father standing on my porch in Washington, looking older and more tired than I remembered him, but it was definitely him. He was wearing a winter coat that looked expensive, but it fit him loosely, as if he had lost a lot of weight. For a moment, I thought I was hallucinating. This man, the same one who had disowned me 8 years ago, was there in front of my house, as if it were a scene straight out of a nightmare. "Hello, son," he said quietly. The voice was the same, but there was something broken in it. I slammed the door shut, so hard that the whole frame shook. All those old feelings of betrayal and rage came rushing back as if everything had happened yesterday. My hands were shaking, and I could hear my heart pounding in my ears. My father kept knocking and calling my name, my old name, which now sounded foreign after so many years. "Please, son, open the door and let me talk to you. I know you are angry, but let me explain." The desperation in his voice was something I had never heard from him before. Right at that moment, Hannah arrived from the supermarket with our daughter and asked me who the man at the door was. I told her the basics. She knew the whole story, of course, but she never thought she would ever cross paths with anyone from my family. She was furious for me, but she told me to take all the time I needed and find out what he wanted while she took care of the kids. She took them to their rooms and gave me space to deal with whatever this was. Then I opened the door and let my father in. He looked around the house, taking in the family photos on the walls, the kids' drawings stuck to the fridge, all the obvious signs of a happy family life. There were pictures from birthdays, vacations, school events, years of memories he had never been a part of. "You have done well for yourself," he said, and in his voice there was genuine admiration. "No thanks to you," I replied. "What do you want?" He slumped onto the couch and suddenly seemed to carry every single one of his 73 years. His hair was completely gray and he had deep wrinkles around his eyes that I did not remember seeing before. "I need to tell you something. Something we found out last month." What he told me next was both vindicating and infuriating. Apparently, Kyle and Ashley's marriage was not the fairy tale everyone believed. About 6 months ago, Kyle had started noticing weird things in Ashley's behavior. She would get secretive with her phone, make up excuses to go out alone. She would stay late at work for supposed projects that never materialized. Kyle decided to play detective before confronting her. One night, he followed Ashley when she said she was going to her book club, only to find her car parked in front of a downtown restaurant. He waited inside his car for 3 hours until she came out accompanied by Derek. He did not confront them right then. Instead, he started observing everything carefully, her schedules, her excuses, her way of behaving when she thought no one was watching. He started documenting Ashley's infidelity. He followed them for weeks, taking pictures and recording videos of their affair. It turned out she was still having an affair with Derek, who was now also married with kids. They met at hotels, at Derek's office after work hours. The affair had never really ended. They had just gotten better at hiding it. But here comes what really made my blood boil. They had been at it for years, not months, years. It had started even before I caught them that first time and continued throughout their entire marriage. Kyle found credit card records showing regular hotel visits over the years, plus more evidence that they had been seeing each other even before the wedding. Ashley had lived a double life practically since the beginning of their relationship. He also discovered text messages between them, and what was in those messages was devastating. They talked about their future together, about leaving their respective partners. They even discussed what they would do if anyone found out what they had been doing. The worst part, during their marriage, Derek had gotten her pregnant, and she had terminated the pregnancy without telling Kyle, terrified that the baby was not his. In the messages, they laughed about how naive Kyle was and how easy it had been to fool everyone. Ashley also confessed her constant fear that the family would discover the truth, especially that I would return someday, prove my innocence, and expose her lies. They even talked about how they would react if I showed up and tried to tell what had really happened. When Kyle finally confronted her with all the evidence, she broke down and confessed everything. She admitted that she and Derek had been together before she started dating Kyle, that they had never really broken up, and that when I caught them that day years ago, she panicked and made up the assault story to cover her tracks. She owned up to all of it. She had married Kyle while still being in love with Derek. She had allowed my family to destroy me to protect her secret. All that time, her plan was to leave Kyle for Derek as soon as Derek's divorce was finalized so they could be together openly. My father found out about all this when Kyle went to him for advice on the divorce. Kyle was completely devastated, wondering how he could have been so blind, how he had wasted years of his life on someone who never truly loved him, and how he had destroyed his relationship with his own brother over a woman who had been lying from the very beginning. "Kyle is beside himself," my father said. "He knows he ruined his relationship with his brother for a cheater. He wants to call you to apologize, but he does not even know how to find you. He has been asking everyone if they know where you are, but you completely vanished." I sat there trying to process all of it. 8 years too late. My family finally knew the truth. 8 years after throwing me in the trash, they realized I had always told the truth. And yet, the feeling of vindication felt hollow after so much time. "And you?" I asked him. "What is your excuse for believing her instead of your own son?" He looked down at his hands, and I saw his eyes fill with tears. "I have no excuse. We were wrong, completely wrong. We let that girl manipulate us into destroying our own family, and we have spent years living with the consequences." "Is that so?" I replied. "Because according to what Marcus tells me, you all seemed pretty happy with your decision. You got your perfect daughter-in-law, your fairy tale wedding, your happy family. You simply erased me from the picture and moved on as if I had never existed. "We tried," he said, "but not a single day went by that I did not think of you. I wondered where you were, if you were okay, if you would ever forgive us. Your mother, she was never the same again. She has been on antidepressants for years, crying every Christmas and every birthday because her son is not there. She keeps your room exactly the same, as if she is waiting for you to come back someday." "Her son was right there," I replied. "You just chose to believe he was a threat instead of listening to me." We talked for almost 2 hours. He told me how Kyle's world had collapsed upon learning the truth, how my mother was devastated when she realized what they had done to an innocent son, how everyone had been trying to find me to fix things. They had even hired a private investigator, and that was how they finally located me in Seattle. I told him about my life, about my wife, my kids, my career, about my in-laws, who treated me like a true son. I showed him pictures of the grandchildren he would never get to know. I told him about the family traditions we had created, about the life I built from scratch. I explained how Hannah's parents had taken on the role of grandparents and how my kids never felt they were missing anything. "I want to fix this," he said. "I know I cannot undo what we did, but maybe we can find a way to move forward. Maybe we can be a family again." "There is no way to move forward," I replied. "You made your choice 8 years ago. You chose to believe a liar over your own son. You threw me away like I was worthless. And now you want me to just forgive and forget because you finally discovered the truth." I told him about the years of therapy, about my trust issues, about how my faith in family loyalty had been completely destroyed. I explained that I had built a new life surrounded by people who really cared about me, and that his sudden appearance had disrupted the peace that cost me so much to achieve. I told him about the nightmares I had for years, wondering if I really was the monster they thought I was. "I am sorry," he said, crying. "I am so sorry for everything. We were terrible parents. You deserved so much better." "Your apology comes too late," I replied. "I now have a family that chooses me every single day, that believes in me, that would never cast me aside for someone else's lies. You can take your guilt and your apologies and go back to the family you chose to protect." I walked him to the door and told him never to contact me again. He handed me a piece of paper with Kyle's phone number on it. He said that Kyle also wanted to apologize, that he had been waiting a long time to reconnect. I threw it in the trash without even looking at it, making sure he saw me do it. After he left, I sat on the couch and cried for the first time in years. Not out of sadness, but out of relief. I was finally completely free. The truth was out. My family knew they had been wrong, and I no longer cared. Everything I needed was right there, in that house, with my wife, my kids, and the family that chose to love me. Hannah came downstairs after putting the kids to bed and found me sitting there. "Are you okay? How are you feeling?" she asked, sitting next to me and taking my hand. "Like I can finally close that chapter," I said. "They know the truth now, but it does not change anything. This is my family. You guys are my family, and that is enough." Later that night, Marcus called to see how I was doing. Apparently, my dad had contacted him to get my address, and Marcus had been debating whether he should warn me or not. I told him what my father had said to me, and Marcus just laughed. "It took them long enough to realize," he said. "A shame they lost you in the process." "They lost me, but I do not care anymore," I answered. And for the first time in 7 years, I truly meant it. A lot of people are asking if I am going to reconnect with Kyle. The answer is no. He had 8 years to question Ashley's story, or at least consider the possibility that not everything was as it seemed. Instead, he married her and lived his happily ever after, while I rebuilt my life from scratch. Some bridges are burned completely, and that is fine. For those asking about my kids, they know I am from the Midwest, and that I have family there who I do not speak to. When they are older, I will tell them the whole story. For now, they are just happy kids with parents who love them and grandparents who spoil them. And I want to keep it that way. Comment. Hey everyone, I really hope this story stuck with you the way it did with me. What hit me hardest is how important it is to hold on to your self-respect no matter what. I've learned that setting clear boundaries isn't selfish, but necessary for your peace. Sometimes, walking away from people who hurt you is the kindest thing you can do for yourself. Healing takes time, and it often means building a new family with those who truly choose you. Taking responsibility for your own happiness is one of the bravest steps you can take. I encourage you to reflect on the relationships in your life and ask yourself if they lift you up. Choosing peace over being right can feel scary at first, but it changes everything. You deserve people who believe in you and stand by you through the tough times. Remember that your worth is not defined by anyone else's opinion of you. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.